Good morning to everybody. We appreciate everybody joining another episode of EANS Coffee Break. So this is episode 4. My name is Matt Marsiglia. There will be a short 3-question survey after we conclude, so we appreciate your thoughts on how we can continue to make these conversations more impactful. So I'm your host today. EANS, we all know EANS is the Emergency Assistance to Non-Public Schools, which provided $5.75 billion of funding to schools all across America. And we distribute payments for approximately 20% of the country. And today we have 2 special guests, Dr. Kara Bratton and Fred Williams. Dr. Bratton, can you please introduce yourself and then your background? And Fred, can you please let folks know your current EANS role and your background in education as well?
Sure. Thank you, Matt. Thank you for having me. So I'm Dr. Kara Bratton. I'm the Special Education Director for Lutheran Special Education Ministries, which is actually an international ministry serving private schools all across the country and one international school as well. I'm also, I guess, in my free time, an adjunct professor for Concordia University Irvine in their doctoral program.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Fred Williams. I work for the Michigan Department of Education. I have for the past 15 years. I have 45 years in education. And as of December 31st, this might be the final year in education. So, but I oversee the federal grants for the state of Michigan. I oversee 17 consultants who review the 900 districts we have here in Michigan and their apps. And then I was assigned EANS, and fortunately we found ClassWallet and some great people like Kara and LSEM, and has made my job easier. And we're a little slow here, but we're working through the last of EANS 1, and we have our application process started for EANS 2, and we're just waiting for authorization from above. I'm also the state ombudsman, and I like to say I'm the longest state ombudsman interim in the United States, because it's going on 4 years I've been the interim ombudsman. So we have a good time here, and we hope you enjoy the time we have today.
Thank you, Dr. Kara and Fred. So now that EANS is more mature, we're about 18 months into the program, and EANS 1 actually expires in less than a year. In the beginning, we were seeing the plan was to purchase supplies for remote learning, such as computers and internet improvements, and obviously sanitation to keep schools opening safely. Now, as we've seen from the last 2 coffee breaks, that most EANS and MINS have been more focused on support for learning loss, which is one of the main approved spending categories as defined by the U.S. government. And we discussed a little bit during our last 2 coffee breaks about learning loss. And today we want to change the conversation a little bit from a negative connotation that loss implies. So Kara, your team at Lutheran Special Education Ministries is not a fan of the term learning loss. You use the term unfinished learning, which I'm a huge fan of. Can you talk about how you view those terms differently and why it's important?
Sure. And first, I will say I cannot take credit for the term. I read it toward, about a year ago into the pandemic. And that just one of the things that really stuck with me, because again, working in special education, I feel like there's so much negative connotation that sometimes goes with things. And I always like to look at, how can we kind of focus on the positive? I think the phrase learning loss can make it seem like somebody did something wrong, that students did something wrong during the pandemic, that teachers did something wrong. And, nobody did anything wrong or bad. It's the reality that we're living in. But I also think, when we say something is lost, it seems like, okay, we can't find it. It's never coming back. And it could indicate that students' learning is gone. And that's really not the case at all. It really, using the term unfinished learning to me just kind of changes the narrative to learning, and those skills, they're still there. We just need to figure out which skills are there, which skills have students retained, which skills do we kind of need a little bit of a boost on. One of the other terms I've heard that I really like is talking about reassembling learning. Like if you think of learning as different puzzle pieces, where it's not that, the pieces are gone, but it's just how, the pieces are there. Maybe there's a couple that are missing, but how can we kind of help students put those back together? They've had a lot of disruption, obviously, over the last 18 months, but there's pieces that are in their brains. We just might have to kind of connect those to the grade level skills that they're working on, and help them, really focus on what's essential. There's so much in standards, and the teachers are used to from year to year kind of teaching and wanting students to master, but we might really just have to focus on what are those essential skills? What do we really need students to learn from year to year? And then how can we kind of connect that with maybe some of those gaps that they have, rather than spending so much time in just remedial instruction, where if we focus on that, that learning loss and that negative connotation, we're going to spend so much time on remedial skills that we're not going to have time for that grade level content. So that's just why I think that, putting a more positive spin on it with unfinished learning or reassembling learning is just, to me, just kind of a better feel to it.
Kara, even if you didn't originate in Michigan, you're getting lots of credit. And
I'll take it. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm trying to get the entire state to switch and quit saying learning loss. So I appreciate you bringing the term to us.
So what does addressing unfinished learning look like in schools, or what should it be in practice?
So from my perspective, again, being in special education for 20 years, I'm a big fan of data. I'm a big fan of appropriate assessment, which I know that some teachers, that kind of makes you cringe when I bring up assessment and data. But I think if we're really thinking about unfinished learning, we need some information. What I see too often, especially over the last 2 years, has been we make some assumptions that, well, kids are a year behind, or these students are 2 years behind because of remote schooling or whatever the case is. But if we don't really have information from data to kind of back that up, it's not just that, oh, they're 2 years behind, so we need to cover everything from the last 2 years. They have bits and pieces of skills, but we really need to hone in and have a way to focus on what those skills are. And what skills that students might still need some work, and to connect them to grade level standards. So when I'm talking about assessment, I'm not, saying state assessments. I think a lot of times those don't go into enough detail about the specific skills a student needs. So more like curriculum-based, kind of formative assessments to really see what are those specific skills we need to target. And yes, it might be a little bit overwhelming when we look at that, because if you have a class of 18 to 25 students and you're doing these formative assessments or curriculum-based measures, you're going to see different strengths and different weaknesses, and it might seem overwhelming because there might not be a whole lot of consistency. But I think we just really have to take that first step and see where students are and see what skills we still need to plug in. So assessment is a huge part of that, rather than just making assumptions about where a student might be, or just based on how they did on, the math test chapter 2, that might not give us enough information. So we really need that to kind of prioritize what skills need to be taught, and again, what is kind of essential for that student. And then along with that too, I think progress monitoring with any assessment is going to be huge. So we might identify where the student has mastered some skills, where they might still need a little bit of work, where they have those areas of unfinished learning. But then once we are kind of targeting those skills, we need to see, are they progressing the way we want? If we can put all of our best intentions and what we think are kind of the best materials, best resources, best people, but if we don't see students progressing in those skills, then we need to take a step back and change gears. So I think that progress monitoring is a huge piece of that assessment as well.
Kara, I couldn't agree more with you on all those statements. And I too am a former special ed teacher here in Michigan, and a special ed administrator. But in Michigan, we do, at the Department of Ed, we do have a small team, And they use a program, Survey of Enacted Curriculum, to help focus down to the details of what the student's missing in their learning. And we've been very happy with that. And again, it's what you said. It doesn't say, okay, he's not doing well in math. It tells you exactly where he's or he or she is having problems. So it's called the Survey of Enacted Curriculum. And if anybody's interested, ever email me. And we have a small team that's kind of targeted and become experts in it. And then they go to our districts and assist them in doing it and understanding it. Again, but I thought you hit everything on perfectly. So thank you.
Yeah. And I love that there's that kind of, again, resource available, or maybe something similar to those outside of Michigan. That's great.
Yeah.
You mentioned state assessments a little bit, Dr. Kara, and I know we briefly mentioned on a previous call about how state assessments list students top to bottom through the Freedom of Information Act, which to me doesn't sound very fair for students at all. That can be some very negative connotations when they see their name at the bottom of a list. And are there any specific recommendations? I know you already mentioned a little bit about doing testing between assessments. Anything additional that you wanted to add?
Yeah, so some that the teachers I work with use, or that I recommend, some that, again, teachers sometimes don't like because they're face to face. I think, computerized assessments can be great. They can be convenient, they can be efficient, but sometimes too, I say sitting across a child, one-on-one with paper pencil for a couple minutes, there's no, they can't fake their way through that. So some assessments our teachers use, and I would recommend, are the EANS Learning. They have tools for both reading and math, all the way from K-8. And that's EANS is formerly DIBELS. So if you hear DIBELS still exists, but it is a completely different assessment now than EANS. And DIBELS is also another really good one through University of Oregon. I like both of those too, because you can purchase them, but you could also access them for free. Now you might have to pay for the database, but I think those are great options. They have benchmark assessments for universal screenings. They also have progress monitoring tools, like I said, and all just kind of connects together. They do have options too for online reporting, where again, a teacher could score it on the iPad, but again, a student's not actually taking the assessment on the iPad. Another one I do like is Easy CBM. So it's easy curriculum-based measurement. And again, that can be online, or it can be pencil paper printed out, and again, covers reading and math. I know we could probably spend the whole time talking about different assessments available. And I know that some schools, use a tool like NWA map testing, or some other ones that maybe already have that progress monitoring, those skills built in. So those are just my suggestions if the school doesn't already have something that's working well for them.
Yeah, that's a wealth of information. I took a class 20 years ago in college, and who knows, the number's still the same, but they say humans, they only retain 15% of what they learn the first time it's taught to them. So I think it's really important that we hone in on some of these things that you're saying, Kara. I love the idea of just having a pen and paper and get in front of the kid and, hey, tell me what you know, and repeat it back to me. There's nothing more powerful than that.
Yeah.
Fred, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I just really hate when people take the state assessments and narrow them down and to individual children. And in the state of Michigan, I'm sure it's the same elsewhere. Our big newspapers like the Detroit Free Press actually list the districts scoring from top to bottom, and that's not fair either. And parents look at that and they don't understand. And and I agree with Kara too. And if they're behind, they need progress, and that's what we need to focus on. That we've got them on the right slope, going up and improving. And everybody's going to improve at a different rate. So, Kara, wow. DIBELS has now got a new name. Wow, I'm showing my age.
Yeah. Well, again, DIBELS
was,
still exists. Yeah.
Yeah, DIBELS was brand new at one time when I was teaching.
Yeah.
So, Gary, Lutheran Special Education Ministries, I know with ClassWallet, you guys are in several states that you do work with, and you said you're international. You guys do work all across the country. So, as a third-party provider for EANS, what are some of the services that you guys use to address unfinished learning?
Yeah. And so first, let me say our name can be a little bit misleading, especially when it comes to EANS and funding. One, we don't just work in Lutheran schools, so we will work in any Christian school. So if a school is listening saying, "Oh, we're not Lutheran," that's that's okay. We love you. We would still work with you. And also we've always done more than just special education. While our services, we do work with students with service plans and identified disabilities, we have always worked with students who just need help with additional skills. So the EANS funding is perfect for that, and perfect for what our teachers have honestly done for years. So really our teachers and our services can, again, under those federal categories, address learning loss. That's kind of how it would have to come through an EANS application. But with that funding, LSEM provides a teacher to work on site. And again, our teachers work exactly kind of like what I've been describing. They can help with assessment, or if the school already has a great universal screener, they already have those assessments in place. Our teachers can help kind of pinpoint, okay, this is what that assessment data is telling us. So these are the skills that we kind of need to target with specific students to address that unfinished learning. So that might be in small groups. It might be our teachers working in the classroom, pulling out, kind of rotating groups of students during reading time, math time. And then our teachers can also help monitor progress to make sure kids are progressing toward those skills. And if they're not progressing, sometimes what we see too are classroom teachers are kind of like, I'm not sure what to try next. I have a class of 25. And these 3 or 4 students, I'm just not seeing them progress. So our teachers can really be collaborative and focus on that collaboration piece, talking with the teachers, observing, working directly with students, but really just being another resource for teachers to say, let's try this. Let's see if we can, get the students, through progress monitoring. Can we move the needle if we do this or make kind of these changes? So it's just kind of a great resource for schools in terms of directly working with students or taking care of some of those pieces that I think teachers all wish they had time to do, but we just all know there's limitations with time and resources. So our teachers can help, kind of fill that gap. We also do require that our teachers document things if they're providing interventions, if they're providing that direct support. We want our teachers communicating with parents about how that student is doing, how they're progressing, and then also communicating with the school and teachers about anything they see. So it really is, it's a team approach. It is not just a separate program that kind of functions independently of the school. We really want it to be integrated with the classroom, with the teachers, and with everything else that's going on in the school community.
I have to laugh when Kara says LSEM's name causes some disruption. Excuse me. When they first came to Michigan, Kara's colleague, and we had a few incidents where districts kind of wouldn't let the private school use the services at the time. And Kara's colleague and I had about an hour and a half conversation. I was quite impressed. And we had our Michigan Association of Non-Public Schools, for short, we call it MANS, actually send out information on LSEM. And not that they need my endorsement, but LSEM is in Michigan is the #1 vendor for EANS funding. So I think that's the telling mark that they do a great job, and our private schools have certainly, and again, not just the Lutherans, but all other schools have certainly trusted them and appreciated the partnership. And I've heard nothing but good things. But yeah, the LSEM name kind of put people that aren't familiar with special ed going, no.
Yeah.
But they do a great job. So and everything, Kara, you're saying is districts appreciate, our private school districts, is that reporting and monitoring and making sure that the general ed, the teacher in the classroom, and the knows what LSM is doing, and the fact that where the progress is going. So you've done a great job in Michigan.
Yeah. Thank you. And again, we will work in other states where work with ClassWallet and other vendors through EANS as well. So again, if you're not in Michigan and you're interested, please reach out, because we can work as an EANS vendor in many different states as well.
And going with the world we live in today, which is full of consumption culture and buy, and come back and keep buying more, especially with corporations and businesses, they'd like to continue. They don't want to lose their customers. With that being said, I know you guys have a very passionate stance with removing students from the program. So, your goal is obviously to bring them on. They have some unfinished learning. They want to be remediated. Can you talk a little bit about how when they are ready to be removed from the program and when you feel they're comfortable to the unfinished learning has been complete?
Sure. Yeah. And again, it sounds weird sometimes to say my goal is to, for our teachers to never see those kids again. But really we do want to work our teachers out of the job to say, we want students to, again, make progress. And if they're making progress, and research tells us, we can make that progress, we can turn around, address those aspects of unfinished learning, and then hopefully they're kind of right back on track with the gen ed curriculum. So we do look at and we track, how many students are coming into the program, and then how many students are, kind of leaving the program and going back to the gen ed setting. So whereas again, not all of our schools and not all of our teachers use the same assessment, just because we try to really customize that to the school. So it fits with other areas or other assessments they might be doing. It's very individualized. So we look at that assessment data, but we also just look at, okay, if our teachers are working with groups of second or third graders, are they really turning around and, those students, within that year, or hopefully less than that, are they returning to the classroom and are they able to be successful? So we do, track that information too. And then our teachers as well, ideally have a background in special education. So they can really help look at, the differences between a student who might have a learning disability or some other type of, identifiable disability. And how does that differ from students who just have some areas of unfinished learning? Because there are differences. We don't want to just say that any student who's still kind of behind after 6 to 8 months, well, they need to be evaluated, for a potential learning disability. We're going to send them to the public school. So having our trained teachers, and they have us as resources too, with directors to say, what is that difference? Sometimes it can be a fine line. It can be kind of confusing if you're not seeing students making progress. So our teachers are kind of trained and, can also provide advice on that to know when an evaluation might be helpful and when, no, I think I'm not seeing any other signs that this is a potential learning disability or other disability, but we just really need to keep focusing on the student skills and the unfinished learning, because they're making progress. Let's just kind of, keep on that track. So that's an important difference too for our teachers, and that we want them taking into the schools as well.
Yeah, I think sometimes too, people, you put a child in a program, and if you leave him there and he has gained that success in that program, but if you leave him too long, the research shows that they actually go downhill then. Mm-hmm. And that boost of saying, hey, you were here, you're out of here, celebrate the child leaving like LSEM does is excellent.
Yeah, the less unfinished learning, the better, obviously. So, and we have seen lots of improved test scores. I think in episode 2 of our coffee break, Raymond Kunkin, principal in Florida, showed a huge difference in his test scores year over year using services such as yourself, Kara, that's helped improve some test scores. So I know you guys have a lot of data around that. And you mentioned this is our last question before we're running out of time. So I want to open it up. We have a few questions come in, but if you have questions for our panelists, please go ahead and submit them in the Q&A right now. And the last question will be, you already touched upon this a little bit, Kara, but how does LSEM teachers make the distinction between students who may qualify for special education versus students who are simply just demonstrating areas of unfinished learning?
Yeah, and as I mentioned already, kind of data is a big piece of that. You know, if we see that students are progressing, they're making progress in those areas of unfinished learning, you know, then chances are they probably, whether they have a learning disability or not, it may be the case they don't need to be evaluated. You know, I always say, let's, you know, save the evaluations when, you know, that we still have questions, when students are not progressing and we kind of need more information to help them. So again, kind of making that distinction: are students progressing? Do they seem to be doing well? Are they keeping up with the academic content? And one of the things too, especially you know, last year, and you know, kind of coming out of our first, I hate to say, kind of, you know, normal year of school, was really looking at you know, if teachers or parents were bringing up concerns about students who maybe had already been at that school for a good number of years, then we looked back to say, you know, were there concerns prior to, you know, the pandemic? Has this been an ongoing thing? Or is, you know, has something changed in the meantime? Is there something with the family? You know, and kind of, you know, looking at mental health and, you know, social emotional things are huge right now as well. So we also want to, you know, take those factors into account so we can really help parents and teachers problem solve. And, you know, too, to just, you know, be aware for the school district, you know, they get overwhelmed with assessment requests. So we want to make sure with our teachers too, that when we're sending a child for an evaluation, it really is, hey, we really suspect that something is happening beyond just areas of unfinished learning, so that they can really prioritize their resources to help the students that really need it, and do assessments on the students that really need it. And that's where the background of our teachers is: we're hiring them, we really want to make sure they have a good understanding of learning disabilities and other, you know, IDEA categories of disability, so they can help teachers and help everyone in the school kind of make that differentiation.
Great job, Kara. And Fred, did you have any closing thoughts?
No, I did see one of the questions. My background is strictly Michigan, born, raised, and 45 years of education in Michigan. So when I did any references I gave, of course, were from our state. But I'm sure that any other state has programs like the Survey of Enacted Curriculum and that. But no, I'm just pleased to be here and pleased that LSEM does the job they do. And I know they're not just in Michigan, but they've certainly made an impact in Michigan for our private schools. And we've been focusing mostly on EANS. So EANS with the private schools. Certainly we would, when the EANS money goes away, if the LEAs would like a third-party vendor to work with their private schools, we would certainly entertain Title I funding for that purpose too.
Yeah.
Thanks, Fred. And I see a couple of hands raised. So Sharon, I allowed you to talk. Do you have a question you'd like to ask Kara or Fred?
Fred just answered it. I had put it in the Q&A if title funds could be used for LSEM. So I'm all good. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. And we do, again, outside of Michigan, we do work with Title I in a number of states too. So again, just reach out to us if you have questions. We're happy to work with any LEA if they are willing to work with us through title funding as well.
And we have one more hand raised. I apologize if I butcher your name, but Dio Rani, I believe. Is that how you say your name?
Yes, but my question has been answered. Thank you.
Okay, great. Yep. And looks like we have a couple more questions here. Good morning. Can you use EANS to pay transportation for an educational field trip? Fred, I think that would be a good question for you to answer as from an EANS administrator lens. Transportation is pretty tricky. It's usually used for social distancing, from my understanding. So not sure how you guys would approach that. Yeah,
and we've tried to be as flexible as possible. But yeah, if they would like to, it's more like if they need an extra bus for social distancing or something, that we would approve that transportation cost. Also, in Michigan, we are sometimes been accused, and we are picky on field trips. field trips, sometimes we want to make sure that they have educational value and that they're not just they have lessons that go with them before the field trip and after. And so we do ask a lot of questions about them, but I certainly think with social distancing and that extra buses would be something in Michigan we would approve.
Yeah, so transportation is allowed, to clarify. I believe somebody asked if it's not allowed. So you're not allowed to purchase a vehicle. It's only rental. I know that as far as the US FAQs and the EANS, transportation is allowed, but as Fred mentioned, it's really just to help social distancing. So I know I've seen examples in other states for athletic games. You know, they may purchase additional bus or two, so the buses aren't full of students trying to travel to the games, and it helps social distancing. So to answer your question, dear Rainey, yeah, transportation is allowed. It's just very specific how you can use it. It looks like the only question, we have one more question. I see somebody else might be trying to type something else. But one more question is, when is EANS 1 ending? So the official timeline is September 30th, 2023. Again, your state may have a specific time frame that's different than that. So be sure to contact your state administrator to make sure that's the date. For Michigan, I believe you guys are 9/30. Is that correct, Fred?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. All right, and I don't see if anybody has any more questions. Let's see, I think Eileen, did you have a question, Eileen? Just looks like you were trying to maybe type something in. So I can let you talk if you have a question. Eileen, you want to share anything?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, hi,
yes.
Eileen.
Oh, okay. No, I was just going to ask you, Matt. I'm fine with everything on this topic right now. I did have another question on my account, so I was wondering if I could ask you after.
Yeah, if you want to, I'll look up your school and I can email you, or you can email us at EANS@ClassWallet.com and I'll take care of it for you.
Okay, it's just something that came in and I can't see which one it's for.
Good.
So,
Yeah, I'll take care of that for you.
Okay.
I'll look up your school and contact you, Eileen.
okay, thank you.
And it looks like our last question, Sandy asked, can EANS funds purchase library books? Fred, do you have an answer on that one? That's a unique question. I don't think I've never seen that one actually.
No, either have I. And believe me, well, I know you've seen more than I have, but we've seen a lot. But I would have to get some clarification on that. I really don't know. I haven't seen it. Kara, would that be something you might have heard about or seen?
I will be honest, I haven't seen that one. As you mentioned, I've seen different, curriculum and training for curriculum. I've not seen library books, but yeah.
Yeah, I think definitely curriculum, 100% allowed. Re-instruction is a huge category. Right. So that's, if you consider it to be some type of, new curriculum, that would definitely be part of the programs, Andy. And one last question coming in, are cameras allowed, security safety cameras, for direct pay or reimbursement?
Well, again, the key is, is that the private schools must keep in mind is that anything they buy is owned by the state. So we use the word portable, but I think you could hook up if you hooked up a camera, it would be the wiring and the infrastructure part that goes into your walls. That might be a problem, but I believe we have allowed that in certain incidents.
Yeah, and I've seen that other states have allowed it too, Fred, specifically for tracking who's coming in and out of the building, making sure
security.
Security, that also, and also just monitoring, the number of people coming in and out. COVID tracing, I believe, is used for cameras as well. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the reasons that they allow for cameras. So yeah, the cameras are allowable under certain circumstances. Well, all right, I don't see any more questions. Carrie did a great job. Fred did a great job too. Thank you for all your expertise around unfinished learning. I definitely love that, and reassembly learning. So thank you again for sharing all your expertise around the subject, and hopefully we can move forward past the learning loss and just, unfinished learning and just move to that, because I do love it. And so thank you again for everybody for attending. There is a short survey after this. Takes about 30 seconds to fill out. So appreciate everybody joining, and thank you guys for being part of it.
Yep. Thank you, Matt.
Yep. Bye, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
Matt. Bye, everybody.
Bye.